Okay, we are now talking about the large intestine. Large intestine is super fun because you get to talk about going to the bathroom. And one of the things that I think should be taught in every elementary school is how to use the toilet. You know, I have a favorite story of um, one of my clients brought her son in, and all, with the mother attitude. I want you to tell my son, okay, go ahead, tell Margie what you do. And he said, when I have to go to the bathroom, I climb up onto the toilet seat and I spread my legs and I squat down and I poop. And I said, bravo. And she was like, what? I said, no, squatting is the best way to have a bowel movement, because the plumbing in the human is just like the plumbing under your sink. And it comes down, up, and around, and when you squat, everything straightens out, and the poop can magically flow out of the body without straining. He just smiled, didn't say anything. Years later, he was in my daughter's 7th grade math class, and they're doing introductions, and he looked at her, and she had her moon on, and he said, is Margie Flint your mother? Yes, she is. Oh, I'll save that story for another time.
That's cute. That's cute.
And the kid was just fabulous. So the large intestine needs a lot of attention and care. And you start, of course, by putting right things in your mouth, enough fiber and oil and all those good things to keep things moving. And people who suffer from chronic constipation usually are eating all the worst things for themselves. Glue, for instance, which we call bread. So flour and water makes glue. And if you eat only bread sourced things, bagels and muffins and all that stuff, you will get constipated because there's nothing to really keep it running through unless you're eating completely whole grain, sprouted, with seeds and all that. And even then, I think it could be a problem. So they also will eat dried fruits. And if you eat dried fruits, you have to pull the water from somewhere. So it pulls it from your intestinal walls to take even more water out of you. And most people who are constipated are deficient in water. So those are the basics. Now, for diagnosis, we know that the lines of the face, these are the large intestine lines. And if you have a very clear large intestine line, it can just be from having a habit of drinking coffee. And the coffee line is usually the line with a slight puffiness. Nothing dramatic, but just a noticeable puffiness. And that usually just means they need that kind of stimulation in order to move their bowels in the morning. And if people who drink coffee stop drinking coffee, they often become constipated. So that is something to take into consideration. If you look at their face and you see a semblance of a large intestine line and no lines, then you might go very close to their face and see if they have feathery lines, and they do look just like a feather. They're mini, very light, feathery lines in a row. And those people I talked about yesterday are people who are very sensitive to solvents and foods, and they tend to have more allergies. So if they have those sensitive lines, they'll usually have them under their eyes and elsewhere on the body. If the line, you open it up and there's a color within the line, we want to note which color it is and what the effect of that color is. So red would be heat, blue would be lack of oxygen, pink would be, a pink shiny line would be, this is a long-standing issue that has probably been with the person all their, from childhood on. And if there are pimples within that line, that means they have a very slow transit time and are reabsorbing toxins. Those people tend to have an additional line that goes across their nose, and perhaps even in between the cleft of the chin line and the lip, there'll be an additional line right across here. And for people who have chronic constipation, there's often acne within those blackheads, particularly within those lines, because they're reabsorbing their toxins. If your transit time is too slow, you end up reabsorbing what is meant to be exiting. So we want to have a nice, efficient transit time. So how many hours do you think you should have a bowel movement after eating a meal? What was that?
Every time.
Every time, right on. Yeah. Essentially, if you ate 3 meals a day, the first meal of the day is probably coming out 3 meals later, pooping wise. So it's about 24 hours maximum for transit time. And how do you test transit time? What's your favorite technique for testing? Beets. Good one. Okay, what's
Corn.
another one? Corns, yeah. Corn's my personal favorite, because it is indigestible. So you eat a corn on the cob. It has to be corn kernels. You can't eat polenta, that won't work. But corn on the cob is a really clear, bright yellow marker that you can look into the toilet bowl and realize, oh yes, it's been 12 hours, 24 hours, 2 days. And when you ask the question, how often, you can't say, do you have regular bowel movements? Because if they have a bowel movement once a week, that is regular for them. So you need to ask, how many times a day do you have a bowel movement? And that way you get a better answer. People who have gray cheeks, so remember the cheeks are the lung area, right? And then the large intestine runs along the edge of the lungs. So if they have gray cheeks, there is some toxicity building up in the intestine. It could be that they're breathing something, so you have to differentiate. Is it lungs or is it large intestine? So if we have our large intestine line here, large intestine, and then we have our lungs here. Lungs go all the way to the bottom of the ribs. And then you have a diagonal line that will go back toward your ear from the large intestine line. That's the line that Rosemary Gladstar and I both got that line at the same time. And
Luca, no.
Luca,
He's about to pull it down.
don't you even think about it.
Those are also poisonous for cats.
Astromalis? No.
I thought they were.
I get them all the time. Yeah, my friend has cats, and she's crazy about her cats, and she won't let me bring anything in the house that's allergic to cats. And now the Astromalis
Those were.
are, I've never heard about it. I could be wrong.
So this line, this diagonal line, don't do construction, please, is what we call a gravity line. So Rosemary and I both got this line at the same time. I said, Rosemary, when did that line come? She goes, oh honey, that was the day my breasts reached for the earth. So I call it a gravity line, and it is. It's like one day you're perky, and the next day they're just reaching for the earth. Gravity will have its way. So there's that. Because, lungs, large intestine, breast.